Anyway, with no further ado, we're going to put the spotlight all on Max and throw really terrible questions at him. We're really privileged to have Max here tonight. He is New Zealand's one of our leading employment law specialists, and he's actually the go-to guy for media when things come up that are quite curly topics, and which is the current curly topic, which is the vaccine mandate. And in terms of our small business community, it's throwing a bit of a cat amongst the pigeons for we get to open up when the traffic light system comes. There are a lot of small businesses that actually just don't know where they stand in terms of dealing with their staff. So I'm going to hand over to Max, and he's going to do a bit of intro about himself, and then everybody out there, please think of the questions that you'd like to know the answers for. Put your hand up and we'll answer them. Hey, Vern, because I'm useless at monitoring that, can you let me know when there's a question that needs to be asked? That's all cool.
Yeah, so definitely will.
Yeah, so with no further ado, you're on stage, Max.
All righty. Hey, listen, what a wonderful welcome. And I got to say, thank you very, very much. I feel very, very comfortable, and it's warm. You know, it's just a lovely feeling. So thanks, guys. And I've just got to say, I've done 5 of these at the moment, and this is the most warmest welcome I've had out of all. So I just like to say thank you for that. Look, I'm a Ngāti Pākehā. I'm from the Taranaki. I'm 5th generation. And I was born in a little town called Eltham, which is only 2,000 people. That's my hub. And as we all shared before, you know, that's it becomes your little place of nowhere. But, you know, right through my education, no time at all was anybody ever talk to me about parihaka. Nothing, not a word. I didn't know a thing about it. And so I feel like I've been deprived of my childhood. And we had a good relationships in our school, and there was no problems or anything like that at all. But I had no idea of the massive history that actually went on just got 12 miles down the road in Manaia, as we called it down there. But that's life, and that's what it's all about. So, you know, I brought up in Eltham. I did a bit of a motor mechanics apprenticeship as to start with, and then I ventured off around the globe, then come back and studied law. I've had my own business for a long time now. So I'm very empathetic to small business, and that's how Vaughan and I connect. And I really enjoy that man's company, but don't tell him because it'll go to his head. We know that. And so lots to talk about. Now, let's get on to the subject matter, because small business have got huge responsibility, and this government are loading them up every day while they're stripping us of a lot of our ability to make a profit and make any money. They're also loading us every day with more responsibility. And look, what gave me a bigger shock, which will be a shock to you now, I'm just going to tell you right now that if the government passed a little quiet piece of legislation, you won't even know about it. So if you've got a business where people come into it, if somebody fails to scan the QR code in your business, wait for this, there's a penalty for you. Now, you'll get a shock with this, 6 months jail. For a small business person who lets someone come in their business without getting scanned. Now, this government means business, and they mean they want to reduce our business, but they really are not making it easy for us. And even today, I was talked to RNZ, the radio show, got on to me and said, "Are you aware that this government's now lifting up the cost for anybody in any government business, any person in the food preparation business, and anybody in the cleaning business in the government industry, they're going to be at least on the living wage." Wow. So what does that mean? All small businesses have to lift their wages up to compete, and we just know, all of us know, how hard it is to get good staff right now. They're not out there, so life's difficult.
Max, and I just have to chuck in there, I mean, for people in the tourism and the hospitality sector, 6 months jail is probably an easier way to run a business than the current situation under the government with lockdown and all the other bullshit that we're having to put up with. I think I'd take that. Cheaper rent, that's for sure. Yeah. Hey, Max, today when we put up your post on social media, we actually had some questions come in from people, and so we've assembled a few. Do you mind if we throw some stuff?
No, please do. Just rattle them straight at me.
Yeah, and before I do that, if there's anybody sitting out there that's absolutely got a question they'd like to walk away with, there's one of two things. If we can't answer it tonight, Max is going to give us details so you can have a direct relationship with him, or we'll try and squeeze it into tonight's session. So I'll stop sucking all the oxygen out of the room and we'll get on with the first question. So, Max, the first one that came in was, when will the government change the legislation on mandatory mandates? Is there a specific date or deadline when the no jab, no job thing actually takes effect?
And the answer to that is no. Again, like this, what we're all getting is that there's no ability to plan your business. So unfortunately, no. Now we're hearing every day that they may add to it. Already we've got, what was it, education, we've got the hospitalisation, the health, we've got the borders, we've got about 5 or 6 mandatory people that actually have to have vaccinations. But the government are also threatening to make it more, and they were looking at all sorts of other areas like supermarkets and those other factors. So no, Vaughan, the answer to that is no, I can't help you in any way in giving you any predictions other than already there's some mandates in place and the rest of us have some choices. Now, Vaughan, just let me carry on a little bit here because I think it's important. The foundations of my advice today is on a court case. So there was a case within the Employment Relations Authority that dealt with mandates, can employer force a worker to have a vaccination? And in the border workers area, customs specifically, a group of workers refused to get the jab. And so the employer took them through, looked at all the other options, really, really did a good job of reviewing their job and to see whether it had any risks associated with it, and made the decision they had to be dismissed and dismissed them. That was challenged. The authority looked at it. Now, the important thing was the authority, and by the way, so is the High Court yesterday, made a decision that an unvaccinated person is a risk to your workplace. Now, just remember that, is a risk. And with that, an employer has a right or has an obligation in law, and that's the Health and Safety at Work Act, to actually ensure that everybody's safe in the workplace. So guys, I'm going to make this statement while it hasn't come out yet. I suspect it's going to be mandatory soon, whereupon if you don't take actions to keep your work safe place, and if somebody gets the virus and gets seriously sick out of it or even dies, you could be held accountable for failing to take certain actions. And the 3 actions I'm going to talk about over and over again, Vaughan, so just let me finish with those, is every workplace should have a policy on how they handle vaccinated people and non-vaccinated people. Every workplace should have a safety assessment on each role. So you judge each role to see whether it's got a potential of interacting with other individuals and whether it's not. And the third one is consult. That is, keep talking to your workers and make sure that you've got it. Guys, if there's any bit of advice out there, write everything down. If you're consulting with your workers, at least have a diary or something, you've written it down, so there's a record that you're actually doing it.
Yep. Hey, Max, so from a small business perspective, if you've just said the health and safety perspective and you're sitting there far out, I don't even have a health and safety policy, what does a small business do to basically get themselves match fit before they open up on, let's say we're going to be let free in Auckland on the 1st of December. So what can we do in the next 2 to 3 weeks to make sure we're shipshape and shiny around health and safety? Where would you go tonight?
Yep. So look, a policy is really a flash word for rules. And I think really all it means is if you're the boss of the workplace, you own the business. And of course, under the Health and Safety at Work Act, they call you the PCBU. So if you are managing that workplace, you have a legal obligation to make sure it's safe. So you could make the rules up. It doesn't have to be in writing. I prefer it to be, because then you've got evidence you've got it. And then you pass it on to the workers, and that's consult. So that could be enough to get through on a policy, Vaughan.
Awesome. Okay. And so will there be any legal exemptions for, like, forget the anti-vaxxers, right? That's just like, you can't sort of change the mind of someone that's set in concrete. What about medical or religious reasons where people work for you and they've got absolutely hands down genuine reasons why they can't or won't get vaccinated? How do you handle that?
And exemptions are a real issue. I got a hell of a shock because my view, if a person is unvaccinated and the judiciary have already ordered that person is a risk to the workplace, then I would have thought a person who, no fault of their own, can't get vaccinated, well, then they're a risk to the workplace. But guess what? The government in their wisdom have said with these mandatory areas that they've actually put out, they've said in their legislation that if a person has an exemption, and that's an order by a doctor's letter saying that they're exempt from getting the vaccine, then those people can go to work and expose everybody else to the vaccine. Now, that to me just makes no logic at all. But that's what they've already passed for those particular areas. And I'm really big. I've given advice already on radio and everywhere saying if you can't get a vaccine, sorry guys, you're going to be a risk and the employer can dismiss you. Well, you can go and get an exemption. Now, let's go further. This government got really upset. They haven't passed the legislation yet, but so you can almost ignore it. So a lot of people went to their doctor and got an exemption because the doctors just write them out like medical certificates. And people were saying, hey, I'm exempt, so I don't have to get it. I'm carrying on to work. And Chris Simpkins the other day said, no, we're going to give you a special exemption certificate. So only the exceptions that we've got is on our documentation will be acceptable from now on in. But that's not legislated, and we've not seen any documentation.
Wow. And in terms of the roles out there, because there's many, are there any that are considered absolutely mandatory? So you talked about customs before, so clearly that's a precedent, right? If you're in that space, there's no way you're going to get over the line if you're not vaccinated. But are there any high-risk roles out there as a flag for small business owners that, it's non-negotiable?
Well, guys, I would say this is my view, but you've got to assess it for yourself. So, I mean, it's the manager of the workplace makes their own judgment on this. But my view is if you got a worker in your workplace that interfaces with another person, could be his colleagues, or even could be a member of the public or whatever, if they do that, I think there's a potential risk with that. Now, there will be people that work from home, and I don't think they present a risk. So they could be vaccinated free. And with that, you could say to them, righto, look, you don't want to get vaccinated? No, I don't. Well, then go work at home and be safe. Now, the other thing is, I think what could happen in a workplace, now this is maybe a stretch, but I see the government have even said this is possible. You got an office worker that can keep 2 meters distance from everybody else. Then what you can say to them is, you keep 2 meters distance, put a mask on, have staggered meal breaks so you don't interface with other people, wipe your surfaces down with, whatever it's supposed to be. You make the rules up and maybe they can continue working. There could be those people that would be able to work. But otherwise, anyone else who's interacting or possibly could interact closely with someone within 2 meters, you got to say to them, sorry, you need to be vaccinated. That's my thoughts. But at the moment, it's the judgment of each employer. And I reckon if you'd failed to do it, it could end up like let me just go through it. The Health and Safety at Work Act was born out of Australia. So it was Australian legislation. Now, they've already been through this. And what we found in Victoria, it was New South Wales. The Deputy Premier said to all business owners over there, if you serve anybody in your business who's not vaccinated, we will sue you. We'll get WorkSafe in there to sue you. So, guys, I think that's setting the standard, and they've got the very similar legislation to us.
Yep.
So I think that's a signal of things to come.
Wow. And so if an employer has an unvaccinated staff member and they can't come to work, like say a cafe, and you've got other vaccinated, do you have to pay that staff member?
If you've got a job ready, it's available for that person, you're prepared to pay them, but they've chosen not to come to work for not a good reason in your view, then you don't have to pay them. So let's go through that again. So you've got a job with perhaps an office worker where they could sit in the office 2 minutes from everyone else, masked and everything else, and say to them, look, the job's there, we're ready to pay you, we need you, come back to work. And they say, no, I'm not coming. You can say, no, I'm not paying you. So that'll be a very common scenario I think we've got to face in time to come.
Wow. And I can see this happening too. How are you going to handle someone who's double vaxxed and saying, hey, I'm not coming into work because old, Fred in the corner there is not vaccinated. How do you handle that situation?
Yeah, again, that's another tricky situation, which is happening already. So if a person's refusing to come to work because someone's unvaccinated, but in your view, as the employer, you've got them in a corner, which is 2 meters apart. They're taking all the precautions. You consider it safe. You can say to that person, we're prepared to pay you, jobs there. If you're not prepared to come to work, we say it's safe for you and we'll ensure that you're safe at work. If you're not prepared to come, we're not paying you.
Right.
And you would be entitled to do that. Now, you can take the step further in saying, if you're not failing to come to work and it is safe for you, now this will be going to extremes, you can start disciplinary process and saying you're refusing to come to work in unreasonable circumstances. So we're going to have to warn you. You might leave it, say, a week or two, warn you that if you don't come to work from here on in, we may have to think about terminating your employment. And look, Vaughan, you know, you and I have gone on for a long time, and the rest of you will be like that. I can't afford to lose any staff. Just can't.
Yep.
We can't replace them. So
Yep.
it's going to be a very difficult time for the future for small business. Very
Yep.
difficult.
And look, this is one of the reasons why I'm not in HR, because my patience is so poor. But say, for example, you've got a staff member, you've struggled through lockdown, you're pretty much backs to the wall, and you've got a staff member that refuses to vaccinate, and you go, well, you know what, you're a bit of a cock, I'm going to get rid of you. How far can you go to kind of like make life awkward for them by isolating them, like making them work from the toilet way at the back of the, the warehouse or whatever, so that they leave? What can you do in that regard? Just asking for a friend.
I can't be party to tell you how to do that, but I've got to say to you that provided it's within reason. So there's good logic to what you've got to do. So if you say to the worker, hey, I need you to do this and this, and I need you to take these precautions. I might need you to wear a mask when they're probably not comfortable wear a mask. Well, I'm sorry, it's mandatory in this workplace. You know that the law is going to back you here. So you probably can do those sort of things. Varying somebody's contract, you can't do. So if their hours of work are set in the contract, you can't vary it unless you've got their agreement. So look at the contract carefully and maneuver your rules to make sure that it's within the contractual terms.
Yep.
But the safety factors shouldn't be really in a contract. You have a right as the employer to set hard and fast rules, particularly to keep people safe. And if you're not comfortable even with a contractual one, give me a call, because we may even be able to override the contract for safety reasons. By the way, that health and safety issues override even the Bill of Rights. Now get that, the Bill of Rights, the Human Rights Act, the Privacy Act. If somebody's health or safety is at risk here, those pieces of legislation are overridden. That's why we're all comfortable. You've probably heard it over and over again, everyone saying, the Bill of Rights, you're going to breach them. We don't have to take vaccinations. Well, you don't. You don't have to. You can say this to your staff, your choice.
Yep.
But it's my choice whether I employ you if you've got a vaccination or not. And I'm going to say to you that if you're not vaccinated or you're not prepared to take the safety precautions I want, then we're going to have to say cheerio. And they'll claim, no, the Bill of Rights says I'm allowed to choose. Well, yeah, you can, but not in my workplace. I choose.
Wow. Hey, just before we move on to the next question, because I'm not watching anything, are there any questions out there? Uncle Vern, you're the question watcher manager for the evening. Pete, Uncle Pete.
Yeah, just had a email last week from North Harbour Rugby, who in their board is supporting mandatory vaccinations as a general guidance for the whole rugby union. And they're saying they're supporting this because they believe any other policy is unmanageable within clubs and schools within the union. I mean, it just seems they're stepping out early, and it sort of seems it's outside some of the things what you're saying here. Yeah,
I do agree with you. And look, the other things we've seen, there's law firms that are saying, if you want to come and visit us in our building, you've got to be vaccinated. We've seen that they will not tolerate any employee in that workplace unless they're vaccinated. There's big construction sites out there making that mandate already. Look, I think the situation is that with 90% vaccination rate, and that's what the government's heading for, which is OTT in my view. But anyway, if they get there, our population is going to be, majority of us are going to be vaccinated. So you're pretty safe in going with that. But look, I'm hearing you, because I've got very, very close friends who are refusing and will never get vaccinated. One's for medical reasons, and saying that it's just unreasonable and unfair that I'm going to be removed from civilization almost, but I'm not allowed to go to a bar, a club, a shop. I won't be allowed to do anything, and I can't work. It's going to be harsh. It's too harsh on me. So I understand the angst here. It's going to cause a lot of problems. And the worst part of all is that the employer, and that's you guys, the small employer, us guys, are going to be the ogre here and the terrible person who's going to actually have to enforce it. To me, that's not fair. But nor's life, I guess, is it? But we've decided to have our own little business because we feel important. But by God, we're paying the price at the moment.
Yeah. Hey, Tuati, you got your hand up there, bro. Oh, Mike, bro.
There we go. Sorry, I was Just doing for our deaf listeners. Max, I see in the back you've got Max with the facts. So could we say that tonight we don't have Max with the facts, we have the Max factor? One thing that occurs to me, Max, that you're talking about is, for me, how conflated this issue's actually become. And I think it's fitting that you have the facts, that you're talking about the facts. There is so much, this issue is so confused. Here the other day, I think yesterday, they had a march to Parliament by anti-vaxxers, where you had anti-vaxxers, you had conspiracy theorists that were talking about the electronic nanobots that have been injected into our bloodstream, the aliens, the this, the that. The thing which scares me is that people don't seem to be seeking information. What they're they're looking for stuff that confirms their particular bias. So what's your opinion, Max, of just the basically the bullshit that's going on around people having these streams, and unfortunately on the internet for a great many of them? What's your advice? What's your thought about how this issue is being confused and used as a bit of a football for conspiracy theorists and would-be experts? I'd be interested to hear your thoughts.
And look, what an interesting question, because thank you for that. That's a fantastic question. And it's going to add to a large debate, because I haven't got a clear, straight answer for that. But even online, I think it was on Vaughan's LinkedIn page today, a guy challenged me with that sort of thing already, saying, we should do away with politicians and let the people decide. And look, I think you've shown us a very good example there, Tiwali, is somebody who people think they're doing research, but actually go hunting for what they want to hear. And of course, more they do that, the more the social the traffic seems to go to them about that information they want to hear. But and look, in our society, we've built it for thousands of years or hundreds of years, and we've decided that we should have judges and people that can have the law. And look, I've got to say, in my experience of that, like High Court judges are very learned people and able to grapple with situations and learn things very quickly and pick it up. And now they have to research it. Now, just this decision that came out 2 days ago from the High Court, that judge had 2 days of hearing, and they presented the argument from both sides. And with that, how rude! I've got the phone going. But what I was going to say is that decision, I actually have respect for the judge here, and I think that he gave us some good thoughts. But listen to this. Where are we? This is what the judge said. Justice Cook was satisfied the vaccine is safe and effective and significantly beneficial in preventing systematic infection of COVID-19, including the Delta variant. It significantly reduces serious illness, hospitalization, and death, and it is likely to materially assist in preventing the risk of outbreak. Now, in our society, we trust people like that. We've learned to and got to, and I don't particularly like our judiciary system either, but we've actually got a system, so we need to support it to some degree. While we should all do our own research and to be satisfied that we're getting the right information, I think we also need to be guided by our learned people like the judges and people who've been around a bit longer than others, and listen to them very intently. And that's what my message to people would be out there. But, our society, we still should encourage people to debate, and we should encourage people to have another view, and we should sit and listen to them. And I'm all in favor of that.
Hey, Max, I've just had a question come in here, which is a staff. If someone catches COVID from an unvaccinated staff member in your business, is the business liable or responsible for that? Like, will that throw you in the clink for 6 months in the cooler?
And maybe longer. The answer to that is yes. The consequences for a breach of the Health and Safety at Work Act is significant, and jail time. And serious jail time. So usually they aim for the top. So the CEO or the managing director will personally be held liable. Personally, hear that? So, I mean, it's money out of their personal pocket, and also they'll go for them. So If WorkSafe decided that an employer or a business owner was reckless and didn't keep the safety of people and people were harmed, then yeah, I would think that, and that could be anybody, that could be members of the public in their business or anything. I would think that there's going to be serious consequences. And unfortunately, you know, we run a little businesses, all us people, but the facts are that we could lose everything, and it would be awful if that happened to us.
You know, there's something that we touched on it before, that was health and safety. And most small businesses, well, they just don't have any, right? They make it up as they go along. And this is an area that I think that, because the thing about COVID, you know, we're seeing the daily cases spike up. It's kind of not if, it's when it ends up in your backyard or your living room or whatever. So, you know, I think the number of businesses that could end up with someone who's got it on their staff is actually real. You know, that's a real thing. So.
And the stories I'm getting out there, and look, guys, I would appreciate your comments on this, but I understand that there's COVID's out there thick and fast, and there's a real don't go and get tested, because as soon as you do that, you're going to be locked up, and then your family's locked up. So don't you dare go and get tested. And people know they've got it. So I've got a friend who's a policeman. He goes in he's been followed this lady down the road who's known to have COVID, went to her address, and she'd gone to her mother-in-law's. And in that house was 3 or 4 people, all with bad colds, all suffering. And no one's got COVID in here. And so that's where I'm saying his view is that it's out there thick and fast, and it's really going out in our society majorly. But people don't get tested because they don't want the blemish on their reputation and being a nasty person and to bring shame on their community. Wow. So I think Vaughan, you're right. I think it is out there a lot, and it's going to be in our businesses quite a lot as well.
Yeah. Look, I mean, you've got to be careful what you say around this whole thing right now, because it's kind of like an us and them discussion. But, you know, in my mind, in 3 years from now, right, it's like a flu shot. But right now, today, it's a bit more serious than that, because people are dying and stuff like that. But that transition period that we've got to go through, and then all the crap that we're putting up at the moment, one of the things, and this question's just come in that's made me think of that, can a business, before they say so we're talking a hair salon or a gym, which are closed right now, before they open up on the 1st of December or whatever, can they rewrite policy now? So staff turn up back to work and it's like, oh, hang on a minute, there's a new policy around vaccination that's going to not attract grievances. Like where people go, well, we locked down 85 days ago and now I've come back to work and it's a whole different set of rules. I can't do my job. You know, that's something that I can see where people, staff in particular, are going to have an issue if the rules have changed. Does that make sense?
It does make sense, and a very good point. Remember the 3 things I said that businesses ought to do? One is create a policy or a set of rules in regards to vaccinated people. And the other thing is to do safety assessments on every role. And the other thing is consult. Now, the answer to this question is the consulting basis. So if you're thinking about changing the rules, you might want to say, get your team together and go, look, guys, I'm thinking about this. I'm considering making it a total, vaccination place only. And so anyone who's not vaccinated, we're going to have to ask you to change. And by the way, the law encourages you to tell people they should get vaccinated. And then you say to them, I'm not going to enforce this, but I would give you, say, 2 or 3 weeks to go through this, and we can have a discussion about that. And that's, again, it's consult. And then in that second 2 weeks, you're going to say, well, my policy's coming into place then, and if you're not vaccinated then, we're going to have a sit down and have a talk about what we're going to do with you, because I don't want you exposing the virus around our workplace. And if that individual's still pushing back, you're going to have to sit down with them and saying, look, can you work from home? No, you can't. You need to be here. Can we put you in a corner somewhere? No, you need to go out serving customers, because that's what you do. So we got nothing for you. We're going to have to consider laying you off unless you get vaccinated. But I don't want to do this because you're a good person. Maybe would you consider going home with no pay for a while until things blow over, and maybe you can come back later and we'll talk about it. Just put up all these options. And the other thing is, you must, have that assessment of that worker's job. And look, most of you will just know everybody's job anyway and know how much into reaction it is. But then you go for the next one is look for any alternatives they could do to save dismissing them, and go through that process with the worker before you make the decision. Hey, look, man, I can't do any more for you. I'm afraid we're going to have to call it quits if I can't find anything and you haven't got any solutions for this. We may have to part company. That's a sort of a process I want you to go through.
Well, hey, we've just got one coming. Shantae's asked, do you want to ask it, Shantae, or do you want me to read it out for you? Because it says here, what if you were not vaccinated because you've already had COVID and you've already built up the antibodies in your immune system? That do you not need to be vaccinated? That's a pretty good question. You know,
it is a good question. Yeah. And I don't know the particular answers to that, but I guess it's a medical one. But again, if you're the employer here, and Chantel, I know you're not, but certainly if the employer was here, I'd be saying to that employer, you need to satisfy yourself that this work is safe for your workplace. And if you're satisfied, well, then fine. But if you're not satisfied, then you need to, go through the process. But I would say that you need to go and undertake some research, get some advice, get some medical advice, because Max can't help you with that one. Sorry, folks, but if I was a doctor, I'd probably have a stethoscope around my shoulders now, trying to act like a big timer. But no, I can't. So I don't know. I think possibly it would be a hard one for that employer. But the other thing is the employer needs to be decisive, have an opinion, do the research, and then communicate it very, very clearly back to the worker. And look, I'm saying these things, they sound like nice things to do, but actually it's going to keep you from getting sued as well.
Yeah. Wow. I've got a comment here from Carew, which is a very interesting one. I've been asked 5 times in the last week to prove that I am double vaxxed before large national companies and key government suppliers will allow me to do certification and audits to allow them to do international business. I've ended up getting a letter from the Ministry of Health to prove it. That's huge. Hopefully that doesn't end up with the secret police knocking on your door tonight, Carew, and then feel free to jump in and comment on that. But how do you feel about that one, bro?
Yeah, look, I do feel sorry for that. And look, they have a right to question you. In fact, all employers not only have a right, they have an obligation to ensure that they know exactly who's vaccinated and who's not. So, I mean, asking the question is allowed, and to get a straight answer. Now, quite often employers are playing this game, by the way, and be aware of it, and you could do the same. I'm going to ask you if you're vaccinated or not. If you choose not to answer that question, I'll take it that you're not vaccinated, and I'll act on that basis.
Nice.
So most employers are choosing that sort of line to go with it. And yeah, it's harsh, but again, I think as employers, you need to be decisive and make clear rules, and so the staff are not sort of and any misunderstanding. We've got a prime minister now who's loading us up in all sorts of difficult ways because we're not sure what she actually means. But so you need to take an example what not to do. What's that, Vaughan?
She doesn't know what she actually means. So anyway, going back to that, where you said if you ask the question and they choose not to answer, you'll assume that as a no. As an employer, what are they legally entitled to demand in terms of information, with Privacy Act and medical records and that? How far can you go in terms of the questions that you ask?
Well, that again, I mentioned before that health and safety overrides the Privacy Act, overrides all this legislation, the Bill of Rights, all these things. So you have a right. Normally under the Privacy Act, the employee would not have to disclose whether they're being vaccinated or not. But in there, if you read the Privacy Act, there's an out for when it comes to the safety of others. So you do have the right, and I would recommend you do ask the question. And you've got to satisfy yourself you've got the right answer, because we don't have the vaccination certificates yet. So you've got to satisfy yourself if your workers have been honest with you. And look, some of them may choose to be a little bit clever with the truth. Well, you may have to go with it if you believe them, or if you don't, you might say, well, can you bring me a doctor's certificate to say that you're being vaccinated? And that would be reasonable, in my view, to ask for that verification.
Wow. And so, like, for example, like the construction industry, often you walk past building sites and they'll have cages up and, say you can't go in and get squashed by some bricks or something. And they'll have a whiteboard that'll say all the things and it'll tick when stuff's been done on the construction site. Can construction companies or project managers like Naylor Lab or Fulton Hogan, when tradespeople and suppliers are coming on and off the site, can they actually ask them if they're double vaxxed before they enter or exit the site?
And that's happening right now, Vaughan. A lot of construction sites have already got that mandate. Nobody's allowed on site unless they're double vaxxed, and you'll see signs up already. And you'll see shops going to be having the same. You're only to enter the shop if you're double vaccinated. And they've got to rely on people's honesty with that. So you're going to see more and more of that. And yes, they can. And look, I've got contractors contacting me right now saying, my God, our primary place of work is on this big work site. And they've told us that we're not allowed on there unless they're vaccinated. My key person is not going to get vaccinated. What can I do? My business is stuffed unless we can go on that site. And I've got to say, well, I can't help you there. But I can say to you that construction site has a right to set a policy, and you're going to find the law is going to support them, and they are. We've had 2 High Court cases. We've had one in the Employment Authority. That decision, by the way, is still to be appealed in the Employment Court. And I might suspect it's just going to be like the rest of the globe have challenged these things over and over. We're way behind, and they've gone nowhere, unfortunately. So you'll find the judiciary will support the employers here if you're going to actually have to mandate it.
Yeah. And actually, Shantae's just chucked in a comment which is kicking on from what Karu said. And that says schools are not allowing any contractors on site without being double vaxxed. Luckily, I was. Good news, Shantae. But our other staff member who only had 1 jab was not allowed on site. So, yeah, you did right. They're policing it.
And the difficulty is here, look, I'm getting off the employment law, but I think it's something we could all share in. But we know that, for example, they're just saying that some schools might not open. We got the word today that, was it the 17th we're opening up? And some schools, it will be up to them whether they open up or not. The truth is, a lot of teachers are refusing to be vaccinated. The truth is that they can't open up because they haven't got enough teachers. Now, the same thing's going to happen to our hospitals. Now, we're predicting that the rate of people in hospital are going up. It's already gone up, or was it threefold in the last week or two? There's 80-odd people in Auckland now in hospital. A friend of mine who's a manager of one of the hospitals here has said he's down 150 nurses now, and he's got next week, I think it's the week after, sack another 70 who refuse to be vaccinated. He said, how can I run my hospital? I won't have enough nurses. So we're finding that this is really causing a lot of harm in the real place. It's very nice to sit at the top up in Parliament House passing these rules. But when it comes to practical stuff like you and I, we all got to deal with it in our businesses. It's not going to be pretty and it's not going to be easy. And Vaughan and I have made we actually talked about this. We think a lot of small businesses may just ignore a lot of these rulings. And that may happen, but it also happens, you got to take a risk if you're going to do that. And the risk may be if you got a breakout or someone got seriously ill, someone could come after you. So, maybe that risk is worth taking if you've got a really key member of staff and that's the key to your business. Maybe you're going to take those risks, but I can't advocate it right here, but I wouldn't mind betting it's going to happen. Yeah.
And on that note, in terms of nurses being at the coalface and, right at the front line, I'm surprised that many nurses wouldn't want to get vaccinated, but hey, that's freedom of choice. But if you really look at what happened today in context, wartime, Winston Churchill went to the bomb sites, right? He went to the front line where it was high risk. Our Prime Minister came to Auckland 85 days after imposing lockdown, the toughest lockdown on any city in New Zealand. And we don't know where she went, but wherever it was, I hope she had a nice lunch with a platter of oysters. So, it's kind of like, Saddam Hussein would be proud.
I took my camera and I make little videos as a hobby, but I went down Queen Street and interviewed. I went into the shops and interviewed. This is weeks ago, about a month or so ago, and interviewed the shop owners. And my goodness, there were some sad stories in there. I reckon Jacinda would have got really, really good press if she'd gone in there and heard their sad stories, showed them some sympathy, and at least said, we'll give it some consideration how she answers most questions. We're thinking about that. We'll get back to you about that later on. But that would have got us some really credit with us people sitting here today who have really got to try and manage this terrible process and do some awful things to our fellow human beings and small business workers.
Yeah, I can hear the wheels spinning around inside Uncle Pete's head. Have you got a question there, bro?
Could have been the wheels or the smoke you might have heard, mate. Just a quick, you mentioned earlier about businesses being responsible for people scanning into their shops. How are they going to monitor that? I mean, they're not going to have surplus staff in these situations.
Let alone pay for it. Actually,
let alone pay for it.
Yeah.
I mean, there's all this additional stuff going on. And is it just 6 months jail, or is there fines that are involved as well that could affect
There's a $4,000 fine, and I think for the perpetrator, but the person who might wander in without getting scanning in, I think there's a $400 fine. And there's just inequity in all that. And the thing is that no small employer even knows about this piece of law. I told the media about it, and they didn't. They said that's not true. So I sent them the legislation and said, you go on the legislation site and you can find it. And they still didn't even publish it. This was TV3. And I was very disappointed because, I mean, this is everything to us people who are going to be accountable, and consequences could be for us. But that's how I'm finding the law is now. There's a lot of laws passed out there which are unreasonable and unfair, but they park them. And it's only when you have a big problem and they will make a mincemeat out of you using all these laws that are sitting there just latently waiting for them to use. And they'll ignore them themselves, these laws, when it doesn't suit them.
Yep, no, I agree. And I had a friend recently who forgot his phone and scanned it in the supermarket using his wallet. So I'm not sure how effective that was. Just a friend,
Well, just a friend. You got away with it, Warren, I can tell you that. We don't know anything different.
Friend.
Yeah.
But look, yeah. I just go around the cafes and now and see they're serving coffee, but it's only half the people that actually go up there and scan the QR code. No one's policing it. It's again, but if something happened that was untoward or some difficulty happened in there, believe me, WorkSafe will be in there like bricks and all, and actually take this small employer to pieces, and that just upsets me a lot. But that's how I think that these laws are designed. They're only there for when somebody might die or something terrible might happen.
Yeah. And, it's just like, how many times have you seen those? I'll come back to you, Poari. I just need to chip this in. Where people kind of go on about the scanning and that, the big brother is watching you, and the anti-vaxxers are right into that. But the reality is that anybody that's got one of these devices, the camera and the mic on here, everything that needs to be known about us is already known anyway. It's kind of like there's nothing that's going to come out of that scanning, that tracer app, that's not already in the hands of whoever it is that captures data. It's just a laugh, But anyway, hey, Tuati, what do you got, bro?
Thank you, Vaughan. I was just thinking about your campaign slogan. It goes, "Here's a disease, Vaughan's the cure." That's something I've been thinking about.
Sounds like the name of an Irish band to me. The Cure.
It does rather. Hey, bro. Respect the Cure. Respect the Cure. I was just thinking this morning on the way to work, I called into a bakery for my customary early morning sausage roll, ham sandwich, and coffee. I don't know how high order that is, but what happened was when I walked into the shop, Max, there was a sign on the door in which the bakery was saying, we do not discriminate. We care about all people, irrespective of vaccinated, unvaccinated, so on and so forth. And I think the grey area for me here is, I guess, that people, especially in local areas, are wanting to support local people and are making it a moral issue as opposed to a health issue. And because there's a lack of actual real information out there, people are doing best guess. People are filling in the gaps. I found what you've been talking about this evening to be terrifying. Terrifying in the sense that there's so much ignorance out there about the issue, but also it's the old bait and switch. There's something happening over here and they're passing legislation which is going to screw us. Yeah, and I think that, in answer to, I was thinking before about, talking about what is the disparity in terms of, particularly Māori people, and I'm only talking about from what my experience is that there's an innate distrust. You talked about Parihaka before and brought that up, and which was last Friday was the anniversary of Parihaka. And, so there's an innate distrust of, I guess, the man and the system and all those sort of things. And, that's probably another session. But I think that also what's happening in the absence of accessibility in the absence of actually having real information, people are filling in the gaps, getting things wrong, getting all sorts of sources of information where actually not sources of information. As I said before, they're more like opinions of other people's opinions. It's really scary, the level of disorganization that's going on there too, because as Pete said, how do they police that? How do they know this? And of course, Vaughan is very, very close with Mark Zuckerberg, so he's got access to all that information. But I found it really illuminating what you're talking about, Max, and very much without agenda, just getting that information. I think is something which was really, really important at the moment.
Yeah, and what you bring up is a very important issue too, because I think that a lot of people are looking for information, and they go out there, but what they've fed through social media and our devices is what they've been searching in the first place, and so they get fed more and more of a certain opinion, and it's not helping for them to get a balanced view of it, and it's not good for us at the moment, and that's why some people are just convinced there's no other opinion out there. Everything they're getting is right, and that's where it's just losing it. You know, going back to what you said, we serve anybody. If they can serve coffee at a 2-meter distance and to someone who's unvaccinated, good on them. I'm thinking good on them. Yep. You know, they're not showing discrimination or anything belong, and they're doing it safely, and it's not going to harm anyone else. I mean, we can have our opinions in regards. Some of us are pretty staunch in regards to, you know, you've got to be vaccinated or else, and I don't want anything to do with you. I think it's going to break up families. I mean, I've got some of my relatives, a niece of mine's refusing to get vaccinated ever. And, you know, she's still my niece. And so I need to remember that. But if I might keep my distance, because, you know, I'm an at-risk person. I had cancer last year. And so I just say to her, well, please respect but I'm sorry, but I can't get close to you. I might do an elbow touch with her, which is getting close to 2 meters, but that'll be it. But I don't know. I just seem to respect people having a point of view, but also I do respect, first priority is keep my family safe.
Yeah, awesome. Hey, Max, just coming back over towards the employment law lane, we talked about health and safety earlier on, and you talked about rules. But as far as employment contracts are concerned, do they need to be updated to reflect vaccination requirements, or can that just sit in the health and safety lane?
I think we're going to see viruses around for a long time. So I think it probably is wise that you have a bit of a ruling about that, but be careful what you put in a contract. So my view is you don't have to right now, but when you renew your contracts in future, you might want to think about that and what actions you might want to do. And also get some flexibility in it. We're at a certain stage with this virus where we need to, you know, get a bit tough with vaccinations. That may be not the place with the next virus we get, and it may be complete different circumstances. So be careful what you put in it. And the other thing is, when you've got rules as an employer, you can change those rules. You have a right to, you know, just set the rules to suit the workplace. So if you put them in a contract, it's locked in. You can't change anything unless you get the worker to agree. So my advice is to keep it in policy, keep it in rules, but what goes in the contract, you be cautious about. That's why you'll see, you know, the rules of a workplace don't often go within the contract. And in fact, I would advise them not to be, because you might want to change them and mold them slightly to change of circumstances. You know, maybe you don't have vehicles one year, the next year you do. So you could have vehicle policy, and maybe you get rid of the vehicles and you've got rental vehicles or whatever. You know, just keep that flexibility for your workplace. And I think be cautious what you put in contracts.
Yeah. Hey, good tip, Max. And just there's one just come in here about the vaccine certificate / passport, which is going to arrive imminently, probably after we move to the traffic light system. I note globally, I think the UK is not recognising the passport anymore or something over there. Will the New Zealand vaccine certificate passport be domestic or global? Will you be able to travel with it, or does it just mean you can run around New Zealand?
Well, it's a gunner, because it's another one of these things that's under consideration and about to be built. We're going to see it soon. And look, it was supposed to be here beginning of November. I think before the end of last month, and now it's supposed to be here in the beginning of November, and now the end of November. It's got to be here by the 29th of November. We still haven't seen it, and we still don't know the legislation. But when they did introduce the concept, the government employees who sit in there under their hands in their pockets and anyway, I won't get too critical, but they were saying that there's going to be two. So there's one for international, and there's one for you know, domestic you know, policies in regards to who's vaccinated and who's not. And whether that's what's going to happen, we still don't know. And look, there must be some legislation to go out with it, because they're passing, well, they haven't passed the laws yet in mentioning the passport, or what do we call it, certificate now. but I understand it's going to be out there, so it's mandated. Now, this is when the government's going to get nasty, I think, and I suspect we're going to have to be forced into banishing people from our workplaces sooner or later. And again, all very nice in theory, but us poor buggers have got to go and do it in practice. It's going to be hell on earth.
Yeah, yeah. And my understanding is there are 10,000 passports in the market now being trialled, and the reason why the 29th day of November is when we move is because they're behind. And so it was meant to be released, and so hopefully it's 1 December. Well, not hopefully, but that's actually the plan as the government intends to implement. Hey, another question's come in here, and this is from the Department of Asking for a Friend. In terms of your Tinder profile, do you need to update that to reflect that you double vaxxed?
Well, in your case, Vaughan, I don't know. I understand you're very popular on that show, so maybe you better. I don't know. You might get more hits, Vaughan. I'm not.
Max,
people have been swiping left.
Max, he's across. Vaughan is across a number of dating platforms. I mean, it's hard. I mean, you'd have to hire an EA to do that, an appropriately vaccinated EA, wouldn't you, there, Vaughan?
Well, I was going to say, Max, it's not difficult to be popular in a neighbourhood where the average age is 85.
Well, I know you've been trying to get people to swipe right for a long time, but you've been struggling with it. So maybe you put up a double vaccination sign. Maybe a tattoo on your forehead, maybe.
Yeah. Yeah. So, hey, and just so that's it. I just wanted to quickly whip around the room and see if there are any questions that we've left out of there, because this has been really valuable. And I think from a small business perspective, there is, the two pain points we always talk about, cash flow and people. This is people, right? This is one area that could cost you a lot of money if you choose to not pay the attention to it that it needs to be.
Just one more question from me, related to, we put a lot of trust in people to do the right thing, but we've seen that throughout the pandemic, things have happened because people haven't been honest and they've done the wrong thing. If people are willing to do it at this stage, when it gets tougher, won't we see a greater propensity for people to lie and manipulate the system?
I'd say it's happening right now. And I would say a lot of small businesses, as I said before, I'm predicting it will probably ignore half these requirements to do it, but at their peril if they get caught. So yeah, I think there'll be a lot of lying, and of course, even now I'm saying that the virus is. I'm guessing the virus is out in our community thick and fast now, and people are not getting tested for that reason. They've been dishonest and they're just passing it around the community. So it's out there, and we're just going to get used to this, I think, and we're going to get the community's going to get saturated with COVID. And provided you've been double dosed, I mean, you're in I suspect we're in a very good place. I'm a bit of at risk, but I'm hoping for a booster next few weeks, maybe a bit of luck, and I might survive. If I don't, well, tough luck. Maybe you'll have to get another speaker next week.
Yeah. Hopefully not. They got
dark. They got dark. They went real dark, Max. They went real dark. Too dark. Too dark, Max.
Black humour. We Māori love it. But I'm the same, Max. I got a text saying that the booster shot is due. So it's 6 months after the second one. So yeah, it's clearly it's something that needs to be topped up every now and then. And
is that Tinder that sent you that text?
Well, I cannot lie. All good. All right. Hey, well, it's been awesome tonight, Max. And something that I think before we wrap up here, what about if people leave here and they've kind of, wake up at 2:00 this morning in a hot sweat because they haven't been vaccinated and they've got a question to ask you? Is how do they get a hold of you?
Vaughan. If it's 2:00 in the morning, I'll give you Vaughan's phone number if you like, everybody. That's not a problem. No, look, I want to issue you all a good invitation and a serious one. You just give me a call, and you can Google my name, Max Whitehead. My business is called the Whitehead Group. I'm happy to give you free initial advice. So if you need some more advice, whatever, and I'm happy to guide you through as much as possible. If I've got to get through and draft up documents and things like that for you, well, I'll talk to you before I do it, but I'll charge you. But I just lean on me, and particularly I know some of you are going to have some very awkward situations out there, and you've got to guess if somebody's lying or not, and how far to push it, and do you really want to know those sort of questions? Be up in front with me, and I'm happy to be give you some good advice back, and more practical advice rather than actually good legal advice. Sometimes you got to make a decipher between the two.
Nice, nice. All right, well, we're close to wrapping up, but before we go, because I've got down in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen my boss there. So, Ren, bro, you got anything you want to say before we head off and do what we do in the dark of the night?
Just want to thank you, Max, for jumping on board. This is quite a great session, and I've really enjoyed all the insights. Yeah, I'd like you to have the last word on this.
Oh, really? This will never happen. I know Vaughan will not let this happen. I know he
Sneaky.
won't. Hey, what a privilege. This is, Vaughan, did you hear that? All these people are witnessing my last word.
I'm gutted.
Look, he's gagged. He's gagged. I love it. This is the best study thing you guys could have given me as a gift. Thank you very, very much.
Awesome. Hey, well, Max, on behalf of the audience here tonight, thank you so much, bro. It's been really, really good information, and we look forward to having you back soon, because I think this is a topic that's probably going to evolve, with time. And so, there's been some interesting stuff come up tonight, and it's something that a small business just can't ignore. And I think from my perspective, I'm the first guy that would put a bullet between someone's eyes if they didn't want to know, but good people choose not to be vaccinated, really good people. And so, there's that compassion component into this in terms of respecting people's freedom of choice. Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, look, we're going to close off with our karakia, and we'll let you get back to doing what you do after we wrap up. So, we'll put into that now. So thank you very much, Max. So, kia tau, kia tatou, kia toa, kia te atawhai, a te tatou ariki e ihu kara iti, me te araha o te atua, me te papinga, te ahitanga ki te wairua tapu. Ake, amene.
Amen.
Okay, thank you, team, and Poari, we'll see you next Wednesday.
Vaughan, sing us out, Vaughan. Sing us out, man. Sing us out.
Hey, again,
One for
thanks
the money,
everybody for the
two for the show.
warm welcome. I really, really felt very comfortable here. So thank you very, very much.
Thanks, Max. Awesome, bro.